Hi, my name is Bill Schultz. I am here with Maxim magazine and talking to my favorite stand-up comedian. Mostly because it's the only person I know who's a stand-up comedian. I'm with Jim Norton. He is a best-selling author. He is the co-host with Sam Roberts of the Jim Norton and Sam Roberts Show on SiriusXM. They also have a great podcast. And he is currently promoting his fourth out there stand-up performance, hour-long, first one with Netflix, called Mouthful of Shame. And it is now on Netflix. Get it, or you suck. Jim.
Bill, it's my fifth.
Huh? Sorry. Research. I hate you. You've already discussed it, but we gotta get into it immediately. All right, you got Louis C.K., Ricky Gervais introducing you on the thing, and then another one, I don't know if you heard of him, Robert De Niro. How the hell did that happen?
I was kind of a consultant on the comedian. I helped him, and I spent time with him talking about stand-up. And they did a couple of minor reshoots, not full ones, just minor angle reshoots. And so I tried to help him with certain things, and we wound up getting along really well. And I tried 3 years ago to get De Niro, but I couldn't. And I just said, fuck it, and I emailed his assistants, and I'm like, I would love to do this. I sent the prior ones I had done with Ozzy Osbourne and Michael K. Williams. And I was in Australia, and I opened my email, and said, Bob would love to do this with you. I couldn't believe that he said yes. The spanking, though, I didn't have in the script. I purposely said, there's no way I'm sabotaging this by telling him he's got to spank me.
Goes without saying, and we're talking about a real spanking here. Go on.
Bare bottom. I brought a brush. I had my director bring a brush. I'm like, in case he doesn't want to touch my ass. So I wound up getting there, and I said, look, I'm going to want you to spank me. And he's like, all right. I'm like, I got a brush if you don't want to touch my ass. And he laughed. He's like, I don't care. And then I get over
Amazing De Niro impression, by the way.
Thank you very much. People say my De Niro not caring impression is almost uncanny. But there was one part where the first three takes were over his lap. And the one that made the take, he finally goes, let's just do one standing up. I think he was tired of feeling my rod pressed on his lap. And he's like, let's just stand up. And that turned out to be the funniest one, so we used it. So.
And I love the fact that you're sort of like getting more and more psyched as you're looking over while he's just spanking your bare ass.
I couldn't believe it was happening. And if you watch the special again in the opening, when you see me, I go like, you just don't seem like you mean it. You can see my face is already red because we've done a bunch of takes by then, so my face has already been slapped a lot.
He smacked you a lot, and that makes you more of a method actor than him.
He didn't want to slap me. He goes, do you want me? He did a couple where he missed, and he goes, you can put. I'm like, no. Fucking slap me. I told him, I'm like, I really want you to hit me. And he goes, all right, man. And he cracked the shit out of me. The first time he did it, he didn't do his line when he was supposed to. Like, he is a real guy, method dude. Mm-hmm. Method dude. Ugh. Could I have sounded fucking worse? He's a method dude. Boo! But the line he was supposed to slap me on, he didn't. So he goes, you don't like how I did that? And I'm like, no. And all of a sudden, pow! It was like completely in the wrong place. He caught me off guard. It was amazing. He legitimately caught me off guard and slapped the shit out of me.
I want to get my bell rung by Robert De Niro, so well done.
It's one of the greatest moments of my life.
Where the hell did you guys film that thing? It looked like a child's grade school library.
His office.
Really? Oh
his
my
office.
God!
He has an office. Those are all family photographs, and his assistants were so nice. We walk in, and they had moved all of his family photographs, so they weren't like filming them. That's where all those books and stuff are. It's just his family stuff. And I'm like, tell him that we didn't touch his shit. Like, I didn't want, because he walked in, he goes, well, I'm like, I didn't touch it. It was your assistants. But he could not have been nicer, man. He was really great. He didn't make me feel rushed. And then Gervais, De Niro I did first. He said 1:30 on Thursday, and he was there. Gervais we scheduled, and he improv. I cut a lot of Gervais's out because what he did was better than what I wrote. I up to the part about the nervous and the Netflix special I wrote, and then Ricky goes, I want to insult you. So he called me a peel turtle with AIDS and the king of cum guzzling, and I'm like, that has to stay. That's funnier than anything I wrote. Fucking mean Ricky Gervais said something funnier than anything I wrote. And Louis was the hardest one to get. Like, I thought Louis didn't want to do it.
Wait, you've known Louis your entire stand-up life.
I know Louis 20 years, but again, he travels more, you know.
Yeah.
And he's like, I'll do it. And then I had never heard back from him. And I'm like, I finally called him. I'm like, Louis, do you not want to do this? He goes, no, I'm waiting to hear from you. I'm like, and then we settled on a day, and he showed up. And he was just great. I had written it differently, and Louis said, no, let me just keep talking. I'll know when to slam it. And I wound up using what he wanted, I wound up using what Gervais wanted, and I wound up using what De Niro wanted, because their fresh input was better than what I had written.
Well, and again, if you haven't watched this already, you're an asshole. And if you've already watched it, watch it again. And I'm not going to spoil it, but Norton's got one of the better Caitlyn Jenner jokes I've ever heard in my entire life in the thing. And again, without spoiling it, it's not like some sort of cheap joke. It kind of goes into the whole melange, if I'm using the word correctly, of what Caitlyn Jenner is. I'm not, yeah. It's not even a real word, is it? Patrick Carone from Maxim is over there editing me as I do this. It's really annoying. The way you did it was beautiful. But I do wonder, not that you give a shit, but when you touch on subjects such as like transgender rights or what have you, what kind of feedback do you get? Do you care?
I had a lot more Caitlyn stuff, but it was like kind of, it started with the Barbara Walters interview, which just dates it too much. So I took a big hunk of it out just because it felt dated.
Yeah.
And the main point was I used that to kind of segue into my own experience with trans women. Like, I talked about it from my own point of view and my own experience. And the feedback has been good. People are like, hey, thank you for saying that. I'm glad that you talked about it honestly and openly and without being embarrassed, because I'm not. I don't give a shit.
Yeah, of course.
So, that was why I just did it. I just wanted to tell the truth. And it's like, everyone in Hollywood, all these fucking fakes, they talk about trans rights and none of them admit it. None of them admit they date trans women. And I know a lot of them that do.
And Hollywood is dirty with that type of...
just admit it.
Yeah.
It's not some big scandal. Who gives a shit?
Thank you. If anything, this is a PSA at this point.
Yeah. Plus,
yeah.
if I ever get arrested, they'll be like, all right, he did say it first, so it's not noteworthy. Believe me, cover my own bases.
Well, another thing that I thought was kind of interesting was you touch on the fact during the special that you're actually pretty happy right now. And I wonder, as a comedian, is that almost a detriment?
No, because
being
it changes. I was in the gym today with my trainer, and it just hit me, this fucking mammoth depression. And I'm like, you are just fucking worthless. Like, you had a funny special. Like, I do think the special is really funny.
It's
like,
pretty good.
And I always doubt what I do, but this one I'm happy with. And the feedback on Twitter, I've never gotten better feedback on anything I've done in my career. Like, I can't believe how good the fans have been. Like, I'm overwhelmed with how good the fans have been about this. And then this thing today was like, yeah, but you're not going to sell out all your shows, you fucking fail. Like, amazing how when this is done, the old tapes just start right over. But I want to feel, I'm trying to get out of that because I don't want to be in a depressive state. There's no reason to. I have a great life. And though these moments happen, but I got to pull myself out of them.
You really do, and I don't want this to be a therapy session, but, I've seen them all, although I guess there's a fifth one that I missed. Did for correcting me.
Oh, you probably just saw it and you didn't realize.
Thank you. It wasn't that good, so it was out of my mind.
You blocked it out like a childhood incident.
But that also brings up a good point, because you have, I'm going to say the word notoriously. Patrick, am I using notoriously correctly?
That sounds right.
So
you have a notoriously loyal fan base. They are, they're very passionate, and so that does mean a little bit what you're saying. When they give you criticism, you listen to it.
Yeah, the fan base, some love me, some hate me now, some are up in the air. They are pretty honest, though. Even if they're not, like, there's times where they're wrong, but I think that a lot of times they're very honest. So you can't just discount them because they're saying something unpleasant. Sometimes it's like, yeah, that guy's just being a jerk off. But a lot of times they're telling you something you just don't want to hear and it's ugly. And then when you sit alone, you're like, ugh. Oh, they're right. I do that. But when they're nice, like with this one, it was like literally, and the most positive feedback I've ever gotten for anything. I know they mean it. Like, I know they're not just going, Jim did it, so we have to say it's good. No, they don't. No, they don't. They're just as likely to go, Jim, fucking kill yourself. So the fact that they are really being across the board nice about this one, that's what convinces me that it was good.
I'm glad. But so, like, give me an example of, like, a criticism they gave you that you're like, all right, I'm taking that to heart and I'm going to change A, B, or C.
When they talked about, they would say sometimes, like, hey, he pontificates on the radio. Pontificating Jimmy. And, like, I was annoyed at the name because nobody likes a name like that. But I'm like, you know what? There's some truth in that. Like, we all get to a point where you want to just be heard, but my job is to be funny. So it's like I've been trying to be aware of like, yeah, you got to be funny as well as make your point. So even though I don't do it perfectly, when they say something like that, you can't just ignore it because they're not idiots. The majority, 80, 90% of them are actually real comedy fans. And when they say something like that, you hear it, you're like, ugh. But fuck it. I mean, it's true.
I mean, that makes sense. And I think there's a lot of people in your field that probably ignore and think, well, if anything, I'm going to do that more. But
it makes me see when other comedians do it. Like, in this political crowd, everyone's trying to be so smart politically. And it's hard not to, but you watch all the talking head shows, and I just turn them off. I'm like, shut the fuck up. I heard you. So it's like, what am I going to do? You're Trump this or Hillary that. I got to try to be funny with it, or I got to shut up about it.
You had one of your many best-selling books. 2008, it was titled "I Hate Your Guts." I think the New York Times called it the Wuthering Heights of terrorist manifestos. And there was a chapter called "I Want to Kill You on Sight,"
Really?
Part 1.
Wow.
And then there was another chapter called "I Want to Kill You on Sight," Part 2, etc. Now, this was in 2008. Who right now would you like to update that you would like to kill on sight?
I don't even remember I don't remember that chapter. I haven't.
That's unbelievable.
Quite a few things.
I blame your editor.
No, those things in that book that embarrassed me. That I'm like, ugh, you dick. Is there anybody I really want to kill on sight right now? I can't think of anybody. Like, I'm not being PC or being afraid to answer your question. I can't think of anybody who's like.
A lot of the people you wanted to kill on sight in the book were just like people in your building that don't say hi to you. So it doesn't necessarily have to be someone famous.
Yeah, no,
See, this is the problem. You're too happy right now.
I literally can't think of, but I can't force it either. Like on the way out, I'll probably think of 30 people whose throats I want to cut.
No.
Like, oh, I'd like to bleed him out like a lamb. But I can't think of. I can't think of one person. Even like at work, I'm working with Sam Roberts, and the radio show I'm on now, I have a really good time with. I do a podcast with Matt Serra for the UFC, and I'm not. Like, I love doing it with Matt. Like I'm having fun in everything. The only person I get really mad at is myself. Like if I don't sell tickets, I'm like, Jim, you're a fucking zero. But that's no one's fault but me.
It didn't happen.
But I mean, this
is when you do the self-deprecating things that I hate. You're better than that.
But I'm saying that's the only person I get mad at. I don't get mad at it's nobody else's fault. Like if I don't sell tickets, that's not fucking your fault. That's not the business's fault. That's my fault. If a pilot doesn't get picked up, that's my fault. So I get more mad at myself than anybody. Like at least in the last few years.
Well, and the Sam Roberts show is great, and it's a really good listen. And you guys do your research too. I mean, we were talking about it a little bit upstairs. There was a Giovanni Ribisi show, and I was listening to it on the way over here. And the whole time in the back of my head, I'm like, oh man, I wish they could ask him about the fact that he's a Scientologist. And then as I'm walking, I'm like, oh, you're fucking asking him about being a Scientologist. And you didn't get any bad feedback from his publicist or anything like that? I mean, you just asked him. And
yeah, I don't worry about the bad feedback. As long as you're not trying to ambush somebody or do something you promised you wouldn't do. Like, I don't want to promise I won't do that because then I can't do it. But it's like, who cares? It's Scientology. It's Catholicism, Judaism, and people are talking about it. Like, they sue people. So, you know, and Leah Remini has a show. So I had to talk about it, and he talked about it. He was fine.
And he actually seemed relatively nice about it. He was nice about it. But he definitely did that, one of those lines where it's just like, you know, it's interesting, you know, if you're Jewish or you're Catholic, they don't ask you about that in every interview. And part of me was like, yes, most religions have their weird aspects, but, you know, last I checked, Judaism and Catholicism don't have slave labor anymore. And so that might be a reason why people are asking you.
That's Giovanni, true. Although Islam has a few things that are questionable.
Wait, I have not read that. Everyone knows where we're at right now.
You know
we are a target.
It's one of those things that, because it's a newer religion, and and plus Catholicism, Judaism, and Islam, all of their stuff is out there. Like you can read everything about it, but there's so much secrecy around Scientology. That's why people ask about it.
Yes, and again, it's fun to listen to too because you can tell that they genuinely like each other. And I have to ask, what kind of or any type of relationship do you have with Greg Opie Hughes right now?
We have not spoken since December, so no relationship. We've sniffed at each other a few times, but it's not like some all-out war or brawl.
Right.
I'm sure we'll talk again, you know. And if we don't, we don't. I mean, but it's not some if I saw the guy, I'd want to hit him with a chair, and I don't think he feels that way. You know, I'm sure we're both annoyed about certain things, but it's like any other. It's like a marriage that breaks up. It's never pleasant, but it's not. Again, it could have been so much worse. Minor snipping at each other, bitching about each other a little bit, but that's kind of to be expected.
I've never had any type of experience with that, so I have no idea what you're talking about. But I did speak with the other half of Opie and Anthony Cumia, yesterday, to get his take on the artist and all-star that is Jim Norton. And because I'm a complete hack, my first question was, what's one thing about Jim Norton that would surprise even his most loyal fans? Because again, this is why I sleep on my couch. And his first response was, the thing that would surprise a lot of people is that Jim is very sensitive and actually a hopeless romantic. Would you care to comment?
I don't know if I'm a hopeless romantic. Maybe I am. I think all the dirty stuff I do, like, it's kind of a search for like a real partner or somebody to fall in love with. Yeah, maybe he's got a point. I don't know if I'm a hopeless romantic in the classic
I don't even know what
sense.
hopeless romantic means.
I don't
to be honest
either.
with you,
Hopeless and then I'm half impotent. Maybe that's it.
I just take that one half full over here.
So I don't know. But I think I am looking a lot less for sex than I tend to indicate. I haven't gotten laid in a while.
I don't believe that for a second. Wow. We'll talk later. Now, the other thing I mentioned to Cumia is big on loyalty. And, if you're his friend, you're his friend. And if you're not, you're not. You're on the bus or not. And, Jimmy's a very loyal friend. And we asked about that, and his response was, Sirius was a place loaded with backstabbing and management who smiled while talking shit behind your back. Jim went to the bat for me every time. Clearly that hasn't affected you at your place of work.
No, I love Anthony. I miss him. But I've been saying it on the air. I've said it publicly. I've said it personally. I've missed him since he left, and I'm going to do a show later.
Yeah,
I'm going to do a show after this. Anthony is a guy who I've never really been mad at Anthony. Like, there's times we would argue politically or whatever on the radio, but there was never anything because he's so funny. And I have such a good time comedically with him that I can never be mad at him. Like, he's like a brother. So my relationship with him is very, very strong.
Who's the most underrated and overrated, again, I'm a hack, comedian right now, in your opinion? And it doesn't necessarily need to be one that's still alive.
Okay. What's funny, who I was thinking about today? A very underrated comedian, Dan Natterman. Do you know Dan Natterman?
I'm embarrassing that I do not.
Dan Natterman,
hence underrated.
He does a podcast with Noam at the Comedy Cellar, and he's kind of like a throwback from the old days, Dan. He talks like that. But he's a really brilliantly funny guy. And I was thinking of his material today, and I think Dan Natterman is fucking underrated, man. He's a very underrated comedian. Who else is I'm trying to think overrated. I can't think of any overrated comics because, people sell tickets. Like, who's overrated? Kevin Hart's funny, and he sells more than anybody. I mean, fucking Chappelle's not overrated. I mean, Russell Peters.
Okay, I laugh at Chappelle a lot. And so the reason I bring this up is because, and this probably will get me shipped out of America, but, all right, see Jerry Seinfeld. I respect the shit TV show. I respect what Jerry Seinfeld does, but the topical, I don't even know how you would describe it, the type of humor he does, I've never laughed out loud at him once. And I will add to that, and this has nothing actually to do with the whole rape thing, allegedly, and he's got some great Bill Cosby jokes in the Netflix special, but Bill Cosby as a comedian never made me laugh once.
Me and Patrice used to talk about that, and I thought Pryor was the greatest ever, and he thought Cosby.
Really?
Cosby didn't make me laugh like the way Pryor did or the way so many other guys did. But I do think that he's an amazing stand-up comedian. I do think he's one of the best ever. I think that I think Chelsea Peretti's a very underrated comedian. Like, people know she's funny. I think she's underrated.
I agree with that.
Joan Rivers, I always thought was underrated, even though she was a giant celebrity.
Yeah, it's hard to say that she's underrated.
But she was never counted in the top 10 comedians. You would never talk about Joan Rivers, and she was a fucking animal. Joan Rivers was an animal, and she was unafraid. She was ballsier than any comic. She made fun of everything. She was brutal, and she was prolific. I think Joan, even though she was a huge celebrity, in the list of stand-up comedians, she was never in the top 10 or 15.
That's a good point.
Never, and she should have been. I always loved her.
Well, I'm glad you brought up Patrice, because I asked on Twitter from his very loyal and sometimes disturbing fan base for questions for Jim. And Harry from BK asks, what is the one thing Jim wishes Patrice O'Neal lived long enough to see?
Fuck. I think Trump getting elected.
I was kind of thinking,
I've said that before too. Like, what I would love to do is if I could wake Patrice up and just go, Trump got elected, he'd go, what? And then he's dead again.
That'd be a stroke times 20.
I'm trying to think if there's anything else. There's been a few times where I'm like, God damn it, I would love Patrice's take on this. I'm trying to think of what relationship stuff has happened, but I would say Trump's election is probably the biggest.
Yeah, that makes sense. And because
Anthony's firing too. I wish Patrice.
Okay,
I would have
good.
been interested to hear his take on Anthony being fired too, because it was a racial thing, and
yes.
he loved Anthony, and Anthony loves Patrice. And how would that relationship have been affected by it, or would it not have been? I don't know, but it would have been interesting to see how Patrice talked about that too with Anthony.
Well, and since we're talking about comedy, I'll keep it on death. I suck. But this is another question. Mike C. or at Blast Double Mike on Twitter said, "How big could have Greg Giraldo have been if it wasn't for the drugs?"
You never know, because Greg had a bunch of pilots, and he's another guy I've thought of too. I've had pilots that didn't go, and I thought Giraldo had a bunch of pilots that didn't go. And he was a really funny comedian, and they wanted him to succeed. And eventually, would he have? I mean, when I say succeed, I mean have a show that was.
Yeah.
I don't know how much the drugs stopped him, or how much it was just he hadn't found that right vehicle yet. Like, you know what I mean? Like, drugs aside, he very well may, in 2 years, have found that one vehicle. They're like, oh, that's what Greg needs to be doing, and then he'd still be on the air today. So it's really hard to say, because I don't know what opportunities he did or didn't fuck up because of drugs. Because I don't think the drugs fucked up his pilots. I think sometimes you get a bunch of opportunities, and for everyone, some go, some don't go. But you saw what a beast Greg was on the roast. I mean, that was who Greg was as a comedian.
Yeah.
And watching him in the Comedy Cellar, and just watching him work through material and hammer out material. I mean, he was just really. I forget how funny Greg was sometimes, because I was closer to Patrice. So the impact of Patrice's death, or Otto was a devastating one. When those guys died, I forgot, like, Jesus Christ, Giraldo was right before that. Like, holy fuck. We lost a fucking great comedian in Giraldo.
Yeah, well, again, I'm glad to be Professor Positive on this one. I
Hey,
apologize to everyone
Believe me,
watching.
every day I think of Greg, Otto, and Patrice, and I go, whew, glad I ain't them. And then they watch my acting and go, we're glad you're not either. You fucking act.
Well, but also that brings up a good point, because you've been famously clean and sober since you were in your late teens. Is there ever a moment, even now, so many years since then, where you've been in a situation where you're like, God, I wish I could have a drink right now?
Not a drink, but there's times where you hear about people chewing pot. Or what are you doing? Oh, I'm fucking putting in pot eye drops. Or look at this, it's a pot fleshlight. Like all these amazing marijuana
I was
inventions.
not even aware of a pot fleshlight, but I'm going to do a Google search
That's
now.
the one, because I had so many bad experiences drinking, but pot I never really did. So when I think about pot, I'm like, that was the one that I'm like, even though I know I can't do it, I don't trust myself. Because like Joe Rogan's a guy who can do anything stoned. Look,
I don't
so Joe,
understand
what'd you do?
that, though.
I smoked pot and I went bow hunting and I cleaned an elk. Hey Jim, what'd you do? I took 2 hits and I fell asleep in my closet because I was frightened.
Yeah.
I'm not Joe Rogan when I smoke pot. I'm paranoid guy who gets nothing done.
You're preaching to the choir on that one.
Yeah.
I never understood people that could actually be functionally high.
Don't know.
Period. Does not make sense.
I respect
to me.
it. I respect it.
When was the last time you apologized for something, A, professionally, and then B, more interestingly, privately?
Professionally, the last time I can remember, and it may have been more recent than that, was after I saw Steve Martin, who I bashed in my book. I was way too harsh on him for just doing a role I didn't like, because I look back at his body of work, and he was really funny for a long time, and he made me laugh a lot in my life, and I was kind of a cunt about it. And I should have made fun of him for doing the Pink Panther because I didn't like it, but I didn't have to be as harsh on him like he had to contribute. I was a jerk off. I was wrong. And it didn't hurt my career, but when I met him and he called me out on it, I apologized, and he was right. And then I wrote him a letter, just with a private letter to, which I sent to his publicist. I don't know if he ever got it or not, but it was sincere, and I felt bad about it. And it was just not that I was never pressured into it, but I literally felt bad about it. I felt I was wrong. In my private life, let me think. To a girl who felt that I was complaining about being stood up by somebody. And she's like, you know how fucking annoying it is to hear you talk about being stood up when I was trying to see you? And I think I told her I was sorry. Like, I didn't realize, we had a miscommunication, and I think I thought she was seeing other, whatever. But I said I was sorry. I didn't mean it. Like, I wasn't trying to be a dick. So I think I said I was sorry to her.
But you didn't mean saying, you didn't mean apologize?
No, I meant the apology.
Okay,
I didn't mean to have not communicated with her. Like, I didn't mean it to come off the way it came off, so I said I was sorry.
I'm glad to see that you're still a human being.
Oh, yeah.
All right, that makes
She's
me
hot.
feel a little
She's fucking
better.
dope. I was smoking.
It's
I'm
always
dirty.
regret after it already happens. All right, last one. Okay, I've always been curious about this. Well, first of all, let me get the question out. Best and worst groupie experiences you've had, and also I will preface that by saying, I don't know if this is like a made-up thing that some hack journalist said, or if this is actually what you guys call them. But I was always told that you guys call comedian groupies chuckle fuckers. Is that an actual term, or is it a made-up thing?
No, it's probably a term, but it's probably something they use in a movie about comedians that doesn't really
that's what
comedians.
I always thought it was.
Like the comics are sitting around going, "So you see any chuckle fuckers?" Dude, she was a chuckle fucker. If any comedian I know said that to me, I'd spit on him. No,
all right, well,
I've heard the
we've
term,
learned.
but I've heard the term, so it probably is legit. But comedians don't necessarily use it. So the best experience is, gee, there's too many good ones. Like any girl who's ever fucked around with me because I'm a comedian is the best one. The worst one was a girl who kind of stalked me for 2 years on the phone. But I never felt violently threatened. It was just enraging and irritating. That was by far the worst experience, but then she stopped. As far as the best, I can't, there's too many good ones. Like this, any pretty girl that's fucked me in the last 25 years, thank you.
Yeah, I hate you even more just for that comment right there. Thank you so much, brother.
Thank you, man.
Well done on the Netflix show.
Thank you, Bill.
I was proud to know you when I watched it.
Thank you.
Thanks for tuning in.
Thanks a million.
That didn't seem legit.